Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Where's My Sage. And I actually turned us off mute for once tonight. I'm Mike from Technical Big Good Research, and my lovely partner, Kristie London, medium and Reiki master. And hello, for once in all
so
our
far,
shows.
So good.
I'm sure I'll mute myself 47 times. I was on with Steve Culls the other night and on his show, and I kept muting myself, and he's like, you do it on your show. Dude. Why don't you do it on mine? So
you got to knock that off, because people actually place bets on what you do and how you do it now. So, you're ruining the odds for some people.
Everybody expects me to be muted, I guess.
Right? So, or, shake it up. Let some other people, put the odds, maybe the odds weighed in their favor for a chance or change.
Just craziness. Hello, Denise.
Gosh. Hi, everybody. How are you?
What's new up there in the falls?
We've had beautiful weather for once, instead of just crazy yucky weather. Although it's been better. Last week was 90, 95. And this week and I'm not complaining at all about that. Although our pool was supposed to be delivered. It's not here yet, so that doesn't help. We have AC, so we survive. But, it's now it's in the 80s and the 70s, and that's probably going to be the hottest week, and the pool isn't here, and now it'll be, what's the big deal?
Yeah. I mean, it's better this week than a week and a half ago when it was up in the Adirondacks, and on that note, folks today, I've been keeping really quiet about it, but I got a chance to spend time with Seth Breedlove and the gang from Small Town Monsters while they were filming their newest adventure. And if you look at Where's My Sage's pages or Tactical Bigfoot Research, there's a nice little teaser from Seth and his new On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Journey.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Wow, does he do nice work? I just sat there and let I could just picture myself in that place, It was awesome.
Yeah, they had drones up, they had helicopters up. I climbed a mountain with a kidney stone with them and came down just because I wanted to see the views that they were seeing. So
yeah, you're a badass. You got a lot of props for that.
So yeah, my doctors think I was a little nuts, but so you'll see that video. That's coming out in March. But if you guys get a chance, take a look at Seth's stuff. He's been on as a past guest.
Yeah.
So all those small town monsters, and basically they went back to the Whitehall area and Lake George and all that. And I'll let him go, but they let me come along as a friend to kind of get out in the woods to get rid of this COVID thing and fresh things up. So
you
get a chance, man.
Credit, please. You're too humble. You're not usually humble, so stop.
It's nice to be out with some friends and getting out in some fresh air. So like I always say, folks, and it's the premise of our show, man, get off the couch and go out and see what's there. So anything else from you, Kristie? Other things coming up, our calendar of events. Who do we have coming up the next couple of weeks? And then we'll work on getting our guest on here.
Actually, so next week we have a reading show.
Reading show.
Here's truly. Yes, and that's the show, you guys, where I'm pulling up my calendar since my partner's not going to pull up our banner that we have. Yeah, that's okay.
I don't have it on this one.
Have it on this one. Now, the next 2 weeks, me, yours truly, it's a reading show, Spirit Messages, so tune in. However, dun, dun, dun. YouTube only, guys. It's only going to be on YouTube that night. So you're going to need to subscribe. Please subscribe. We are I think we're up to 97 subscribers, right?
Yep.
97. We need 100. Get us to 100. If you get us to 100 and we hit that number and stay at that number, we have 2 shows that we plan on. We like to be impulsive. So we've decided not only an extra reading show if we hit 100 subscribers, but we will also do a special show. We thought it would be fun to bring all of you on and to bring other people, real life people on who want to share their ghost stories and make it a show about ghost stories. So we will put the word out when we get to that point. But we thought that'd be kind of fun because we've brought people on before and it's been, interactive. And Mike, my tech guy over there, is really good at, helping people to stay anonymous if you don't want your faces to be seen. So we can do it in a lot of ways. So I thought that'd be a good idea. What do you guys think? I think it'd be more fun. And it's just me all the time, readings are fun, but we gotta shake it up and do something different.
And remember, folks, like on a night like tonight, we're on YouTube, we're on WLFE DB Radio. We're on Kristie's business page, we're on Tactical Bigfoot Research, and we're on Where's My Sage, our public page. So there's 5 different locations we're going to tonight. And then probably tomorrow or the day after, it will be up on iTunes and Spreaker and Spotify. There's about 10 different podcast things. So if you miss our show or you're halfway through and you're like, oh, it's late, like people
God
like
help everybody. We're all over now.
in the middle of the night, you can go ahead and download the podcast and get the audio. So
you don't sleep like we
there,
don't sleep.
So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
something to do. So then the following week we have Eric Altman. On the 28th we have Eric Altman. So that will be fun too. I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. That's my mom. Finally got my hair done. No more COVID hair. So what else?
So that's it. We've got some things coming up. We've got some folks coming along. Kenny Irish is in there. Alexander that I spent some time with from Small Town Monsters will be coming on. We will be doing some live stuff coming up.
Yes, we're going to be going live finally from a location, which is going to be awesome.
Yep.
So what else? So we have some trips that So we had some trips planned. Okay, and like everything else, COVID's kind of shaking that up again. So the next 2 weekends, we do plan on being out live.
Not this weekend, the following weekend.
Excuse me, the last 2 weekends. Really? This is going to happen now? Sorry, guys. Stupid pop-up. So, so the last 2 weekends of the month, we actually do have some investigations planned. One so far is solid, good to go. Let's keep our fingers crossed, say a prayer. The other one, not so much. So we're trying to figure things out and see what we're going to do. So we'll kind of put the word out once we handle that and get everything kind of solidified with that. But so we'll let you guys know. So stay tuned so that you can join us whenever we go live, and pray for a signal when we get there. Yep. Signal, which seems to be our issue. So but I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, getting out a little bit, shaking things up, giving you guys something to do, giving us something to do. So it'll be good. It'll be fun. Yes.
So our guest for this evening. Yes. Are you ready? Mr. Justin Brown is the founder and leader of Interface Death Paranormal Research from Ohio. Justin is also a filmmaker with multiple titles that include, and I just have a small sampling here because he's got about 8 on his website there that I saw. So we can Justin in here. So The Haunted Hartford City, A Haunting at the Old Licking County Jail. I took my contact out, so I'm not seeing my backup screen behind me.
Oh, who are you
Haunting at the Anchorage.
Without your contacts.
Yeah. Again, we go back to the ghost, correcting me on EVPs. A Haunting at the Rhodes Hotel, and I'm going to butcher this one. So Ghosts and Legends of, and Justin, please correct me on this one.
Chillicothe.
Okay, gonna burn that one really bad. Just to name a few.
Awesome.
So how are you this evening?
John.
I'm good. I'm excited to meet you guys, get to know you, hang out, talk paranormal, all that stuff. I'm ready to go.
And we are too. I see you're very scientifically minded, and you guys are on that path. That's always a wonderful thing.
Got to stay balanced.
Yes, technology. So
Mike's gonna have fun with you.
So,
this is right up his alley. Okay, maybe they didn't sound the best. It didn't come out really the way I wanted it to. However, that's right up Mike's alley because he's always the debunker, So he's the more sound. Well, I'm not even going to give you that much credit. Sound mind. That doesn't work either.
No.
he goes in.
I started to follow you guys. There's definitely not a sound mind in me. Chasing around the woods after Bigfoot. There's definitely something wrong with me.
I'll take that as a compliment.
So, Justin, how did you get into the paranormal?
Yeah.
Well, I had my fair share of what I describe as profound experiences, mostly happening in my 20s. I had some, I was brought up in a home that would lead to being what you would say, quote unquote, haunted. There's a story there if we want to get into that, but it pretty much all came to the point of no return. One paranormal experience I had in that home would change me forever. And then if you that was probably late 90s sometime. No, actually it was in 2003. So if you fast forward to 2011, that's actually when my father died at the age 54. He kind of had his heart exploded and he dropped dead at work, and wasn't ready for that. It really, I'm pretty sure it gave me PTSD for a long time. And I thought I was ready to deal with those types of things spiritually, but I was not. And it changed me. And all the things that happened up to that point, I decided to say, hey, all these TV shows are doing it. It's way more acceptable now, especially in pop culture. I can go out and do what these guys are doing. I want to know for myself if what I experience is, if I can replicate it or at least experience something like it again. It's almost like you're chasing the dragon at this point. So I decided to go out and, join a local team. And then after dealing with that for a little while, I was like, I need to go start my own group. So I got my friends together and went out, did your typical ghost hunting, did all the trial and error things and learned all the things, what to do, what not to do. Right. And it pretty much led me to the group I have now, which is a outstanding crew of technicians, EMTs, they have nurse training. There's psychics, there's skeptics. There's a whole list of, skill sets that we utilize. And the biggest thing is storytelling through documentary filmmaking and education too. So we try to do all of it. As we're learning, we're showing you guys what we're learning and what we're experiencing through, an artistic lens, but through a manner that is not only skeptical and methodical and critical, but, we're trying to stay open-minded, but we're trying to, keep grounded at the same time.
Sure. So let's take you back for a second because I'm curious. The medium in me always wants to know certain things. So having grown up in a house that you knew was haunted or was active, we'll say, would you say that you identified with having any gifts of your own, or were they more just paranormal experiences? Because you don't have to be in tune with your gifts in order to have those experiences, right? So was it more that you were just, caught in the circumstances and in the environment that you grew up in, or did you actually recognize that you had gifts back then?
Well, that's a good question. The current Justin Brown would say pretty much all, if not all, a large amount of paranormal experiences deal with psychic ability to some extent. Okay.
Good answer.
Back then I would have said, no, I'm not psychic.
Okay.
Right? So, but
very good answer. I like it.
That's the answer. Like, once you get into studying consciousness, psychology, psychic research, all that stuff, you understand that there is a fringe out there. There's a frontier of what we're trying to understand. And a lot of that deals with ESP. Okay. So, and all facets of the paranormal deal with some type of extrasensory perception. Some people call psychics, whatever you want to label it.
Intuition, whatever. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That sixth sense, right? However you want to label it. Yeah. So do you mind sharing with us what happened? Sorry, Mike, wait your turn.
Yeah. I'm used to it.
Love you.
It's a doozy.
Hey, listen, I've gotten a lot better. So do you mind sharing some of your experiences? Because you've shared it in your bio, you've shared it with us, or you've mentioned that you've had some profound experiences. So what are they? You've piqued my interest.
That's what we're going to lead to. So we got 2 hours, so I'm going to try to get you set up to the point where I'm like, oh no, it's all real. Okay. So
Gotcha.
my mom and dad bought a home in Hillsborough, Ohio. It's a little farm community, about 6,000, 7,000 people in Southern Ohio, from a local firefighter. He had built the house and raised his family. They had moved out to a temporary home until their farm was built, I think, or they were getting into it. But they had rented that house out, and we decided to buy it. My mom and dad bought it from them, and they had moved out to a farm outside of town. We moved in, loved the house, fixed it up, made it look all pretty and homey. Everything was hunky-dory, nothing haunted about it whatsoever. Well, to my knowledge, a year later, the prior homeowner had found out that his wife was cheating on him, and he did not take that well. He decided that he was just going to end his life. He could not deal with the fact that that happened. So he took his own life. And I tell people I think that's why, but you can't pretend to know if that's exactly why. So he rolled his truck out to his farm, to his barn and on his farm, and just shot his guts out with a shotgun there in his truck. So what's strange is right after that happened, we started experiencing things. My mom and dad started noticing footsteps going up and down the stairs. We lived in a 2-story home. Mm-hmm. So my mom I'll tell you right off, she's one of the most gifted metaphysicists, witches, psychic mediums, whatever you want to say, that you will ever meet. And everybody who's talked to her knows about her, says the same thing. There's a whole other show about my mom. Okay, so she...
Okay, check. Bring Justin's mom on.
Good luck with that. But she
has her ways.
she is starting to realize that this man there's a aspect of his consciousness that came back to the house. And you've seen the show Ghost Loop, to where there's like an intelligent haunting, but there's something looping there. This is what's interesting, is that I believe that's what was occurring. So the footsteps are going up and down. Dad says, all of those kids trying to sneak out of bed, sneak out of the house. My mom's like, no, it's not. So he tries to go up the stairs, catches, in the act, for the sound of sleep in her bed. So he's scratching his head, wondering if my mom's crazy or if she's telling the truth or what's going on. He don't know. So that kind of stuff happens, like the creepy feelings of being watched, the presence in the room that you don't know where it's coming from, the footsteps, all this typical haunted house stuff would occur on and off throughout the years. Okay. And leading up to the point where I have my first boy in 2001, then fast forward to 2003, it's just my dad, me, and my son living there. My mom and dad had divorced. So my son is just now starting to talk, put words together, make sentences. So I'm hearing him talk about a man named John. Me and him are upstairs in the bedroom, just me and him. And my dad's named John. So naturally I asked, are you talking about Grandpa John? Uh-oh.
Sorry, that's just my killer little terrier thinking he's, one of Mike's big dogs. Go ahead.
So I asked him if he's talking about my father, and he looks me in the face. First sentence he really ever says that I remember, he's like, no, John R., he's dead. So what's interesting about that, Mike and Kristie, the firefighter that sold my mom and dad's house, the house was named John R., and his name was not spoken for a decade before this moment came up. And all those things my mom was saying, all those wonderings, is it him? Are we crazy? Is it just an old house? Came to a singular point in time where everything that I thought was real wasn't. And everything, the monsters in the closets, the skeletons under bed, all those things you hear about, those things flip to reality right then, like bam. And I went outside and chain smoked for a minute. I just left him there in his diaper, and I'm like having a moment, because now my son, there's no way that there's no other possibility of why he knew his name and he said that, right? This is it. This is it. So I'm like, oh my God, I can't tell anybody this. I can't, I feel like the weird guy now. I feel like people is going to think I'm crazy, but I know I'm not. You can relate. So if we fast forward to 2011, when my dad passed away, of course, there was other houses I went to that were even more haunted than this one. we won't get into those, but the important part to know about this is when my dad died, his mom and dad died 3 months before him. So it was his mother, his father, then him, all in a 6-month period.
Wow, I'm sorry.
So yeah, it was tough.
hard.
So at this point in time, I'm like, okay, the only thing I can think about is death. So hence the name of the group, Interface Death. You're trying to connect with the other side, right? So
Excellent, because I was going to ask you that question. How did you come up with that name?
I was in music before paranormal. It was going to be a heavy metal band name, but that didn't happen. The paranormal group happened. So I just took the name that I liked and stuck it with what fits, because the theme never changed in my head, because all the material was going to be about that same thing. That was my singular focus. So that's how that came up to be.
Okay. Very cool. Okay,
so
your turn.
What was your background before you got into this?
I was into music a lot. I had did sound engineering, recording in studios. I actually performed live in a band, on and off. And I was a big nerd. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I was into photography, film. I was a big film nerd. And I liked all these things. I was a writer out of high school. I got a job as a staff writer for my local paper. I was just a nerd, right? So now that all this stuff has happened, all that stuff I kind of pull from. I wanted to keep creative and kind of show people through my creative lens what happens in my life and what is important to me. So that's what got me into making the video productions, doing the live streams, doing the educational stuff, because I desperately obsessed with knowing what it actually is. Can we use science to explain what it is? And I haven't seen a reason why we should believe that the paranormal breaks rules. Like we probably just don't know everything about reality or how to apply science. We don't have the science yet to understand it, right? So that's why if you go to my website, it says we try to remove the para from the paranormal. We want to actually understand what science doesn't understand. I know it's a big bar. We raised the bar there.
No, that's not it. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, my screen just went out on me.
Yeah. I'm feeling it big time. I'm like, okay, steady. He's talking. Steady. He's talking. Steady.
What are you feeling?
I keep being told to tell. Well, before we came on with you tonight, this muscle in my right here and all up my neck, it felt like someone was squeezing me right here. And a little while ago, my up in here in front and my left shoulder felt funky. A few minutes ago, my chest got like a burning feeling in it and an ache, like the heart attack kind of thing, because that's what it is for me. I'm short of breath and I keep hearing to tell you to take a breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. Does that mean anything to you?
Well, breathing keeps you alive.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that would have been like my mom always says, slow down. You talk too fast. Take a breath. Slow down. Like that's what I feel like it means. Like somebody's whispering to me, take a breath.
All right. I will take a breath. It felt great. Felt great.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. All I heard was take a breath, and it's from my left side. So it's definitely spirit, not my right. Excuse me. So, all right. Yeah. With our show, you never know what's going to happen with spirit jumping in there.
Justin, how did this scientific, if you come in from the creative side of things, the artist, how did the scientific come into you?
Well, I've always been like a nerd. I've always been into science, everything you can think of. And my struggle with dealing with what was presented to me as absolute truth. Like I couldn't think of it. I spent all the time in the world trying to think of how my son knew that person's name, knew that he was dead. I just, it broke something, like something's not computing. So I'm trying to rationalize everything. I always try to think that there's some type of mechanic, there's some type of rationale or reason that this is happening. And I always struggle with, is this actually real or is this something else, right? Is it what we think it is? Is it what people believe it is? Or is it something else? That never goes away. So that's where the science comes in. I always feel like I need to maintain a balance. If I fall too much over into the full-on belief and what metaphysics and religion and theology and the spiritualists and the gurus, the mystics say, or will I fall, into the skeptic, into the materialist world of thinking? So I try to stay in the middle. So I try to balance it with science, but then I try to balance it with knowing that we're all coping with our own psychic abilities. We're all coping with strange occurrences that happen, not to everybody, but to a group of people that we're discovering is much larger than we thought was, years ago. And that's where the science comes in, man. I'm constantly struggling. I'm a hot mess is what I'm trying to say.
Join the club. No. You're not special.
I know.
No.
I've interviewed hundreds of people. I've talked to folks all across the paranormal, and we are definitely not alone.
No, I mean,
it's scary or comforting.
That documentation's a big thing, and I looked, and you guys have some really nice setups on your thing. You guys develop your own equipment, including what you're using right off the shelf.
Well, we use prosumer grade stuff. That's where all the background and sound engineering and photography come in. We don't, we try to use what we can afford. What the professional end says, this is the prosumer stuff. You'll get pro results at a consumer level. Because, if you think about it, if you had millions of dollars, of course you can have millions of dollars of stuff. But what can we get to do the job to where the science community, the skeptical community will actually take a look at it? So we use nice recorders. We try to just focus in on voice phenomena, or we just try to focus in on certain elements of psychical research with it, because I believe if someone claims that they're psychic or believes that they're psychic, that's a paranormal claim. So we investigate ourselves, investigating places. So that's the reason behind the madness of all the setups that you see. We mic ourselves. We point cameras at our face the whole time. We point cameras everywhere else. We set them up with tripods. Everybody has a camera. We cross-check. We take data loggers and log all this data. It's probably meaningless, but we want to make sure we're not missing anything. We're trying to find, patterns in the chaos. So that's where you see all the equipment and all the different things. Now some of the stuff we do create, like we have a remote data acquisition device. It's pretty much like a remote control vehicle with recorders and FPV cameras on it. So we can remotely investigate areas to see if that would yield anything, or maybe there's a spot that's hard to get into that the truck can get into. We use recorders that use scientifically calibrated EMF sensors, microphones to see if we can get isolated voice phenomena on one mic or the other, or we'll try to see if electromagnetic fields are associated with the EVP. We try to see if disembodied voices is actual acoustic energy, like that's why we can hear them, and that's why they manifest physically in our environment. We try to get super technical with the phenomena, and you have to understand things at a certain level. Okay, it's not like Zach Bagans. I mean, excuse me crapping on him for a second, but that guy is not going to figure anything out at all. Okay.
So, with your sound background, do you do a lot with infrasound?
I do research it. I do not have instrumentation to detect it. I feel like it's not necessary, but I do believe that it's definitely something people need to know about. Infrasound can cause, if you research it, there's claims that it can reverberate the fluid in your eye to create anomalies that you might perceive as something paranormal. But that's a little far-fetched as far as I would think. But I don't believe that infrasound has anything to do with voice phenomena, because we essentially can't hear it. So if we're hearing something, it's within the human range of hearing, which is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, give or take a couple hundred, depending on how old you are and how good your hearing is. So ultrasound, infrasound, I do look into things like that. There are things that deal with the audio recorders about ultrasound that can come across on recorders with certain types of phenomena about audio engineering. If you want to get into that, it's pretty nerdy, but I don't try to record it or detect it because I know it's not the voice phenomena that we're experiencing.
Okay.
So I have a question in the midst of all of this technical talk, because
Teddy's in here.
Teddy.
Oh, Teddy.
Because that's what we mediums do. So you have a couple of very gifted women working on your team as well. And if you have men too, I missed it as I was looking through your team and their pictures and their bios. But so as a medium, from my point of view, I look at that and say technology and gifts, they go hand in hand. It's nice because we, investigators and psychics and mediums, we all need each other because it does help we back each other up, and then having all of this come together, we're able to gain a lot more information usually than we would on our own. However, as a medium, I also understand that spirit has free will. So I'm curious to know what you think, because you may not always get what you're looking for or ever figure out how to prove that a spirit is around, because if they don't want to talk to you, they won't or don't have to. So if they're not going to interact, you may be able to pick up on their energy because they're simply around us. But what do you think about that? Because, I've been in investigations where, they're like, we don't like this investigator, we're not talking to them. Or,
Right.
I've said many times at the Statler, I've had to say to people, sorry guys, this is kind of how it goes. It's not like TV. Things aren't flashing all the time, and the medium isn't going, oh my God, I'm going crazy, all these people around me. It's not always like that. But I'm getting answers, and I know it's not as fun to see, as seeing all of our lights on the equipment light up, but here's the answer I'm getting,
Right.
and I'm able to at least provide something, because that's why they have the mediums on the tours. So what do you think about all that? Do you really think you'll ever be able to prove, or do you have an understanding, on that spiritual level of how it works? Because faith has a lot to do with this, it's something that's so much bigger than us. What do you think?
Well, the first thing you said about free will, on the science end of things, you want to try to predict, replicate, right? You want to make a prediction, and if that prediction comes true, you want to replicate it to make sure that it's replicable. Like Einstein saying that, space bends light. And in order to figure that out, you have to look at a star during a solar eclipse and see the light bend around it. I mean, that's how you prove theories or prove hypotheses into theories. So what you're saying about free will is, if you put Justin in the room next to somebody that maybe he don't know, you're not going to get a predicted, replicated thing every time with him, because I can choose whether I answer him or not answer him, is what you're saying. So approaching that with that type of methodology is faulty. You're not going to get the results because of free will, or lack of a better term for free will.
Right.
So what, on the other side of things, what we try to do with psychical research is we try to correlate what the ESP, the extra sensory perception, picks up, and try to validate it with something that we use as extensions of our other senses: the recorders, which is our ears; the cameras, which is our eyes; the meters, which is our feel, so on and so forth. So what we're trying to do there is trying to find a correlation, not necessarily a causation, but a correlation to see if there's supporting evidence of what they're picking up. Because like I mentioned before, psychic phenomena is something that needs to be investigated. In order to investigate it, you got to challenge it, and you got to methodically pick it apart to see what you can objectively find out about it. So to answer the question at the tail end of that is, can we find proof? I believe you can, but it's going to take geniuses and millions of trillions of dollars to come up with a model and develop sciences that we don't have yet, and applications of that science we have not applied yet to these fields of study in order to do it. So I am eventually going to write a book that will detail a physics model for paranormal phenomena and all the subsets of it.
Okay.
Eventually.
Okay. So here's a spin-off on that, though. Sorry, there's another, because you said something, and I'm going to nitpick. Psychic. versus medium. Intuitive versus medium. There actually is a difference. So when you say to me psychic, are you using that as a general term?
A general term.
Okay, because there is a difference between just using the intuition, which is just reading energy around you, because everything is energy. So you're always going to be able to gauge scientifically and pick up scientifically on energy because everything is energy. Fair?
Extrasensory perception is kind of like the umbrella term I'm using.
Gotcha. Okay. Because then mediumship is different, because when you're connecting with an intelligent human soul energy wise, that way
You're actually communicating.
you're right. And they are actually choosing whether or not to communicate. So that's where that question comes from. So, and I know some people, that's why I wanted to clarify if you were using that more of it as a general when you said psychic, or if, because there's a difference. And a lot of people don't realize that, which is why I ask.
Yeah, that
I figured you did, but for a lot of people listening, they may not realize there's.
My son telling me the name of the person, right? I know he talked to him. I knew he had some type of conversation. The way he said it, like I know he was talking to him, and he was talking back. So that's mediumship there. That's the communication, the consensual conversation you would have like we're having now. They both agreed to talk. And that's beyond sensing someone there. That's the mediumship.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I know a lot of people out there don't realize. I have a lot of clients who will say, "What's the difference?" And because they don't realize it. But yeah, I'm glad we're getting into this. This is pretty interesting.
And Justin, if you looked at any of the research from like the Monroe Institute with the remote viewing and that kind of stuff,
absolutely, you have to. You have to look at whatever. You have to look at what the research parapsychologists are doing and all the I forget all the institutes, but there's so many that I've researched, and you have to consider the data and use that to apply to what you're doing, because all sciences and all fields of study is taking what's already been done and continuing the work. So you have to, right?
All right. Yeah, I have some friends that teach down there, so. They've kind of opened my mind in the last year towards more of the paranormal and some of the energy stuff that I wasn't able to explain years ago. We did have a question from the audience. I'm trying to come back up here. Did you make contact with John R. at all to find out why he did what he did?
I had a face-to-face episode, but I wouldn't call it contact.
Oh, really?
Things underneath the bed, huh?
No, not underneath the bed, but similar. Back then, Mike, I'm not the way I am now. I wasn't looking for it. I always tell people that
sounds like somebody else I know. Just saying.
Yeah, I always tell people that you don't find the paranormal finds you in most cases. So back then in my 20s, I'm terrified of this stuff. It's freaking me out. It's breaking apart all reality. I'm freaked out, right? So at the bottom of the stairs of this home, there's what we had as a den was his office, and he would be in there all the time. And when I was trying to go through that room to go upstairs, I felt something. It's hard to explain, but you guys will get it. But there's nothing there. You see nothing physically there, but you know something's there. And then I felt energy rush me, like a linebacker coming to tackle me. So my reaction's this, right? And it stops right there and starts going, starts talking to me in this weird stuff I can't explain. And I about pee myself, run downstairs. My dad has a gun shop down there, and he's loading bullets. And I tell him, "Oh, Daddy, blah, 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 blah," and he's laughing. Which was funny.
He's already had a conversation with him and had coffee.
Well, there you go. A year or two before, he knew his days were numbered, because he kind of knew. You knew intuitively know. He was a hunter. He stopped hunting. He stopped killing things. He started watching things eat and live, like all the animals and stuff. And he started bringing this ghost stories and the things up at Thanksgiving dinner, or when we would casually talk, and people are kind of like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's getting brought up now. Sorry, guys." So yeah, he had a lot of experiences, and I had experiences because there was a few things that I just couldn't turn my back. It was just that he wanted to try to tell me something, and I perceived it as like, "Oh no, he's trying to do something forceful." But
Yeah.
I believe that if you take them 10, 20 years, they're going to eventually get tired of just trying to talk to you, and they're going to get up in your face and scream at you. And I believe that he was stuck in that loop. He went upstairs to look at his children's beds to find someone else's children over and over and over again. And
Is
just
this one of your
imagine.
guys?
Yeah, that's Derek. He's the
I know.
tech
I keep
guy.
catching glimpses of his comments. You're hysterical. What?
Sorry, the way you said that, and all of a sudden that comment came up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
got to be one of your guys because this isn't one of our regulars.
No, yeah, there's a lot of people in there coming over,
Yeah.
like Sandy, Derek, Jessica. Well,
Well,
Jessica Bias and
keeping us on our toes.
yeah, Jessica and Missy Vastine. They're the two metaphysicists in the group, the two psychics that we, do double blind stuff, and they tell us what they pick up, and we try to validate it. Plus, they help film stuff. Derek Schreiner, he's the lead tech guy, camera guy, investigator. Josh Bender, he does a lot of camera work, drone work, and investigates with us. And that's the group, us 5. We go out to all kinds of places in the Midwest, places that people say is super haunted. We go film our endeavors, and we have a lot of fun. We crack up and say a lot of things like that. You have to, right? When you're sitting in a place and nothing's happening, and you're so fatigued, you're so darn tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we kind of got your background a little bit here. So now did you go from, all right, this is happening to me, I need to find a group to help experience, or did you want to try on your own before you got into, I know you said you were with another group before you started,
right?
Interface, which is awesome. I mean, just throws me back to the old days of hanging out with rock metal and everything,
Mm-hmm.
Thought I saw a Twisted Sister symbol and something the other day when I was walking through. But so what brought you to making the films about your experiences?
Well, like I said before, I love filmmaking. I love photography. I love visual art. All visual art, but specifically filmmaking. So I have that itch, and then I want to figure out what the paranormal is itch, and those two itch becomes one big itch. So there you have it. Like, I get to express myself creatively and go on this journey that involves science, that involves psychic, that involves all this Fortean stuff mixed in with trying to figure out if it's true. So yeah, that's how it came to be, man. Like, I love looking through a lens, recording stuff and presenting it in a way that, makes people feel a certain way or makes people think outside the box or think in general. I mean, I want to create content for people to get interested, not only what I'm doing, but what the subject matter is in general. So
and educate in the meantime.
Right, because I'm learning as I go. Like, there's no school you can go to about paranormal research. Well, there's some that claim, there's parapsychological, classes you can go take, but there's no real, university that you can go to learn everything you need to learn, which is vast. So, you learn as you go, and you kind of see me grow and learn as I'm going. And as I learn something, I'd like to teach it, like anomalies on photography or camera stuff that comes on a recorder that people perceive as ghosts, but I believe they're not, like the SLS camera crap and the RRDR60 crap and, the ghost box stuff. How does psychology in the mind play in all this? So I want people to challenge their beliefs and their methods in which they not only investigate the paranormal, but how they perceive reality. All those things matter when you're trying to solve mysteries.
Well, I mean, I think it's good that, like you brought up, having the professional consumer grade stuff, because somebody could go get that off the shelf and try to replicate it. It's not something somebody built in their garage and, we don't know what parts went into it, and I mean, they're cool when they work, but I can't explain how they work. But I can understand a DSLR or a Sony or, recorder or I'm trying to think of the really good recorder. That's really not going to catch me off the top of my head here.
Well, what usual groups don't do is they take something in the paranormal or in an experience, and they ask a question. Okay, I heard a voice in my recorder that I did not hear while it was recording. Okay, how would that be possible? So you come up with ideas of how that could be possible. So the equipment that you might have seen, the voice phenomena recorder we use, does EMF cause it? Does a manipulation of the transducer, the microphone, does it depend on the microphone? Does it, all this and that? You break down all those questions and ideas and you test them and you find out if you can replicate and predict those things that happen, yes or no. Then if it's no, you cross off the list and you go to the next thing. And eventually you will hopefully deduce what at least is not causing it to happen. So eventually you feel like you will get to the answer if you keep doing that.
Right. That's
so when you do get an EVP, what happens to the guys on your team?
What happens to the guys on my team? Like their reaction to it?
Yeah.
We react just like anybody else. We say, what the F? We're amazed. Because when you got something and you can't explain it and you went through all the exhausting measures to try to control the way you're conducting your recordings, when you get it, you're like, it takes me all the way back to, my kid telling me that the guy that sold his house is dead and he was talking to him. It takes me back to that. And I relive
it's
that.
A cool feeling, isn't it? Validation never gets old for me. It never does.
It's like an addiction. It's like that first hit off the joint you took. You want to try to get back to that or whatever, whatever excited you in the beginning. Whatever excited you in the beginning. You know what I'm talking about, Kristie.
What are you talking about?
So yeah, that's how we react to it.
Okay. So what was your first film?
First film. Oh God, I've done 500, Mike. I don't even know. My first film, my first paranormal documentary film.
Yes. Let's go there. I mean, you said you got a vast background. I mean, and I don't want to miss, what you have there. So folks that are interested in tuning in tonight, to go on and take a look at your stuff.
I don't even know.
Post that stuff.
I don't even know. I know the very first commercial film that I tried to release was Higgins Sports School in 2017. I did some really amateur stuff in, 2014 and 15 with like very, like with Windows Movie Maker or something like that. I did very amateur stuff. I had to teach myself how to do filmmaking because I couldn't go to school for it. I didn't have time. I had all these kids to raise, didn't really have time. So in my free time, I just steadily learned and eventually, got to the point where I am now. But that was the first take at a commercial film. Now, the stuff for YouTube, I remember doing a documentary at a place called the Robertson Building in Springfield, Ohio. And I think that is my actual first documentary that I put on YouTube in that format. And that building was tore down, but it was a Coca-Cola sign factory that was really active. And there was a history of all kinds of claims and stories. Very old building. It was like, I want to say 5 or 6 stories, huge, took up a whole city block in Springfield. And I think that was my very first. I'm glad you asked that because no one's asked me that. I had to think about that.
Yeah, your guys are calling you out here in the chat room.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared.
Weird trip. This Derek and Darren.
I will always get somebody off guard. It's what I do.
Good on you.
Because I always like I said, I always like to find somebody that's also scientifically minded and trying to disprove everything that's around you.
Sometimes I get stuck and I have to go whack.
And
reset it.
My Bigfoot team is actually made up of a bunch of scientists, so and biologists and a couple of doctors,
cool.
and so we're always like
one who gets to blow their minds.
Yeah. So we're always looking at technologies, and be it from biofield imagers to thermals to what other stuff is out there. Just standard thermometers.
Love it, Jessica.
Yeah. Always looking for that. So, your current documentary you just came out with is The Haunted Hartford City. Is that correct?
Correct.
And would you like us to play that little trailer?
By all means.
Okay. So we're going to share the trailer here. So let me pull that up on my other screen here. And that's up there.
You got to go back and forth too. That's pretty cool. I love your team. They're so funny.
So we're going to go over here and share my other screen here. Okay. Come on screen. So
awesome. Yeah, I watched this. This was pretty cool.
all right.
Beware of the F-bombs.
Well,
he's got a banner. He's got a sticker for that.
A little sticker for that.
Good.
Yeah.
Occasional explicit language.
And I've been very good tonight. I just want to go on record as saying I've been very good up to this point because, I mean, not like I'm bad, but yeah, I'm usually the one dropping something in some point.
There's a reason for the F-bombs. It's not like it's just because.
Gotcha.
No, sometimes you need them. Okay, for you folks on the podcast, you can go over and find the video on YouTube. And again, Haunted Hartford City. And hopefully I got the volume working here.
It looks like it's muted.
It's muted.
Back off. Back off now. In God's name, back off.
You go back to your bathroom, you stay back there.
I got you. Don't fucking touch me! Fuck! Okay. Leave me the fuck alone! Okay, sweetie. Okay. Open the door, get the door. Open the door, let's get her out of here.
Get the door.
Come on! Leave me alone! 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 Leave me alone!
Get out of here.
Ow! I can't move my feet! I can't move my feet! And God's name, out of here now!
Nice. Okay. Stop screen.
I have to go there. Mike's like, what the hell? I knew she was going to say that. What the hell?
Curious mind killed the cat.
Ooh.
So what's the background?
Yeah, that was amazing.
So the audio there at the end, people are like, that takes people back. They don't expect that. So when I was doing the film, I had access to all the known haunted locations that are publicly known about, and one that wasn't publicly known about. Well, maybe it was. The Monroe House, you may have heard of. It's one of the ones that's been on TV in that town. There is a gal by the name of Deb Schneider that, while I was filming another film with a paranormal investigator at that location, that occurred like the night after we were filming there. And this guy, the guy I was filming with, was like, oh, we got to talk to her. We got to have her part of the film. Well, when that film fell through, I was going to do a documentary of the whole town, including this location. So I asked her if she wanted to be part of it, which she had to think about, because this actually like took her out of investigating for a whole year.
I bet.
And
I could feel it as she was screaming because that was absolutely something working through her.
right. So
100%.
she agreed to allow me to use that audio from her investigation. There was only audio, no video playing or recording, unfortunately, because I mean, not to exploit that for entertainment value, but for education and for documentation of, hey, look, people, this happens to people and this is what it looks like. But you got to hear what it sounded like. Yeah. So she was definitely being, she was either channeling an event that the energy surrounding that area, some people may explain it as being jumped. It's something psychics go through and mediums go through, whatever you want to call them, that they sometimes bite off more than they can chew. You go there to those locations to experience these things. And when you get them, you don't expect to get sucker punched with some of them sometimes. So that's what happens, from time to time.
Awesome.
Very, very interesting. So of all of your documentaries and all of your investigations, well, no, I want to keep that separate. So of all of your investigations, which was the scariest, which was the most memorable, which was the most enlightening, which was the most educational? Where did you learn a lot, or where did you learn like the thing that sticks with you the most? Do you have certain places?
Kristie, it takes me back to my son telling me that the guy was dead. That's it. Everything else don't hold up to it. You know what I mean? Like I've gotten to the point where I'm coming out in public saying, yeah, everybody has psychic ability. I can go into a location and pick up on things that are validated by either the tour guides, the historians, or people that had experiences. Like I can go into locations and, every once in a while get recordings that are just mind blowing, or have an experience that will change your perception of what you think the paranormal is or capable of. But nothing comes close to that moment that got that singular moment of the paranormal is real. The life after death is real somehow. So that was the scariest. That was the most profound to me. Okay. And if it ever comes close to that, I will let you know.
Okay. Make sure you do.
So far it has not. Like I have seen things, heard things that are crazy. But that was the moment that you're wanting to know. That was the moment.
Okay.
Is your son affected by still by having that encounter? Or was he young enough that
he was young enough not to remember it? But I do feel like, my mother's an empath. I'm an empath. My children are empaths. I mean, they have hard times. Like my son has a hard time dealing with, those abilities. And sometimes it'll take you down the path and you're happy, or you feel productive. You feel like you're handling it. But I think my son struggles. He's 19 now. So I feel like most of the time he struggles, but hopefully there will be a point in time where he will get, above water and stay up there and learn how to deal with constantly being down there in the muck and the grime of that type of vibration where everything is, when you're an empath, it's almost like your destiny to rake yourself through the sewage in order to try, and you feel like you're going to raise it all up into the rainbows and unicorns. So until he figures out that and how to manage that, he is definitely affected by it.
Yeah. You, as empaths, we really need to learn how to protect ourselves in different ways for the different reasons, and in different environments, and it can be very tricky. It can be very difficult. And people who don't do it don't realize how much they're picking up on other people or spirit or both, and how much that can mess with you and affect you in a negative way, physically, mentally, emotionally. So hopefully, and learning to set boundaries in our physical lives and with our gifts and connecting spiritually is very, very important as mediums, because it affects us from all angles and it attacks us from all angles. And it can be life-changing if you don't, and life-changing even when you do. It is life changing, but when you have a grip on it and when you have a better control and an understanding, the more you know, the more control you have, even if you don't grip it 100%, we'll say. But every time you learn something about it and you understand yourself and how it works for you, that makes a huge difference. Really
It does. And I think it boils down to not giving so many fucks.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no. Well, because some people suck it in and they're just sponges, or their energy is too easily sucked away by other people. So that part of it does play a part. I mean, it makes a difference, but at the same time, depending on how the empathy works for people, how vulnerable they are, what their path is, what their journey is, it can really make a difference how open they are and how much protection they need versus, someone else who may not need as much.
So your guys are throwing you under the bus again here.
They warned me.
Yeah. The House of Wills. I just heard Justin, that got pretty good. What is the House of Wills?
Ooh.
The House of Wills is an abandoned building in the East 55th Street in Cleveland, Ohio. The cornerstone says it was built in 1905, and from what I heard from the previous owner, that was built by a 33rd degree Mason. And once it stopped being a Masonic building, the Wills family was a very rich African-American family that had a chain of funeral homes. So they essentially took a Masonic building and turned it into a funeral home, which is, whoa, okay.
Just layer it right on there.
We kind of heard that last week from Steve Space.
Yeah, I think I still have a note on my desk here about that. Yeah.
So once Mr. Wills died and that funeral chain stopped operating, pretty much that building did not become picked up and occupied and maintained and repurposed for years and become dilapidated. And they tried to board it up. People were squatting in it. East 55th Street in Cleveland is probably, I think it's the third most dangerous place you can be in America as far as crime per capita. So it's very bad. If you want to talk about energy, it's bad. If you want to talk about physically, it's bad. So Eric Freeman, the owner of it now, he happens to be a high-ranking member of the Church of Satan. So he goes in there and starts decorating it with satanic art everywhere and doing that type of thing. And an interesting guy. He actually has a lot of good values. If you look into certain sects of the Church of Satan, they're not very much, they're kind of conservative. They sound Republican to me. Anyway, he told me that he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he believes in energies manifesting. And he said the house tried to kill him 3 times. And I don't blame the house because of the stuff he's got in there. And I was filming something there, and it's a very unique location. I don't know if it got me, but it kept me on my toes pretty good. There's some photography of that location. I use a few pieces of B-roll from that location. I'll give you a tidbit. One of the pieces of art Eric has in there involves Jesus copulating with Mary Magdalene as you see them sliced, bisected in half perfectly with their guts hanging out on one side and the other side, intact. There over on the other side of the room, there's a torso of a mannequin that opens up, and inside is an upside down crucified fetus. That just gives you an idea of what he's doing. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
There are people like Daryl Marston from Ghost Hunters. That messed him up when he went there. It messed him up. A lot of people, when they go there, they're not ready for that, and it can be nightmarish. It can be very bad. Mm-hmm. Especially if you have abilities. You need to be very tempered when you go into those places, because they'll get you.
Well, hopefully if somebody is gifted and really in tune and connected, they should already be on top of their protection and knowing that going in. If they're not, they're clearly not going to be ready for it.
Right.
There's some things that, you don't expect, or it's a learning experience for you. But yeah, anybody who definitely calls themselves medium, psychic, gifted, whatever, they need to already know that, or they shouldn't be doing it, because that's a huge responsibility on our part, to ourselves and to others, to people we're with, you know.
And he has this building open to the public?
Yes and no. I think now that it's become more popular, the city might be cracking down on the codes more. So it was open to public investigations and private investigations, people who want to do photography, because it's beautiful and it's super creepy inside. It's a stuff of nightmares in there. Okay, guys. So of course photographers are going to go in there.
Sure.
Like it's literally the stuff of nightmares, this place. And that's why the guy I was filming with wanted to go there, because that's what he wanted for the film. So now it's not open, but he's trying to fix it up. His goal is to restore it in his way and his vision to allow the public come in. His goal is very admirable. He wants to restore the building. He loves the building. He wants people in the community to have the building back, to be able to go in it and enjoy it again.
That's just kind of a weird setup. Kind of go to that, draw the evil in, but yet bring it back to the community.
The way he sees it, it's a shift in perspective. The way he sees this is not the way you see it, or maybe not the way I see it. So there's a twisted. It's twisted on how he would say what he's doing versus what we would say he's doing. So he definitely sees it as something good, but indulging in his artistic tastes along the way.
Cool.
All right.
So I have another trailer that you sent me here. The Haunted at the Hillview.
Yeah, that's our trailer to our first episode of our YouTube series. We're in season 7 now, and that will be coming out sometime this month, hopefully. And it was Hillview Manor. A lot of people have probably heard of Hillview.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this to work here. Well, it's
Hit
not
the
going to
mute
work if I'm not on the mouse.
So you made up for your gains earlier. Your progress.
Oh, it's muted again.
Mute. Unmute.
Unmute. Hang on. My monitor, my big monster monitor went down, so I'm trying to bring it back up again without having to go out to the garage and get the 8-inch. So that's really weird that it's not coming up.
Really?
One second, guys.
Nothing's weird.
Yeah, I'll be...
Not in our world anymore. Right?
Yeah, technology when it doesn't. I'll be right back.
I love when people say, you know, okay, please don't think I'm crazy. And I just look at them. Are you freaking serious? You just said that to me. Okay. I talk to dead people for a living, but I'll think you're nuts. Right. Oh gosh. So what's one place that you would want to, their comments crack me up. What is one place that you want to get back to that you have not been able to get back to yet?
Oh, all of them. No.
Okay,
you're gonna make me choose one place.
Of course. Or a top three. Top 3. How's that?
I'm going back to Ohio State Reformatory in August. That's one place I've been wanting to go back to, and this time we'll have, because I want to know if it lives up to the hype. They claim it's the most haunted prison in America, maybe even the world. The first time I went, it was a public hunt with 40 people, and there's no way you can determine a mouse fart between, a ghost or whatever. So I want to go back there and see if we can take a better look to see if it stacks up. Now, when it comes to the dynamics and the differences between locations, huge locations are extremely hard to investigate. They're it's almost like a needle in an empty universe almost. Right. So when you go to like that Monroe house, it's this, smaller house. You go in it, boom, you're there. You're in the mess of it. You're in the you're thick of it. So that place, people go in and out of it every day, all day. You know, now you're going back to the free will stuff. It's almost like the zoo effect. The energy doesn't want to go through the zoo again and have people look through the glass and poke at them, ask them questions, have them answer it. So you have to find ways to connect with the energy on a personal level and not on a tourist level. And I do those with places like Waverly Hills. I had a really cool experience there. Well, it was interesting. I won't say it's cool because it was very disturbing. But at the same token, it's valuable to how you connect with places on an empathic level and on a spiritual and emotional level, because it is what it is there. But Ohio State Reformatory is one place can't wait to get back to. Let's see. I would love to go back to Hillview. We were just there in May. I would like to go back to there. Very, very interesting. And I think Madison Seminary, I definitely want to go back to. And there is a little house that Dave Spink owns. You may have heard of Willow's Weep. I will be going back there. I don't know when. But it will pull me back eventually, and Dave will have it waiting for me. I will imagine.
Yeah, we had Dave on last week, and he brought that up.
What a place!
By the way, okay.
Yeah. Hey, did you know?
Gina's asking, is some for sensationalism though? What was she asking? On YouTube.
So. We were talking about the Will's house.
Okay.
At that point, so is maybe Gina, if you want to come back with us, if
give us context for that question.
I think that's really going to be towards the Church of Satan and the stuff that he's putting in there. Sorry, for some reason my HDMI port on my big monitor decided it was just going to be done. So
it happens.
Well, no, it's what happens when you pick up a monitor before a Parafest from an investigation.
That's a whole other. He thinks I'm impulsive with putting shows on, and then he goes, he's like, I found this, I found that, and I found this 40-inch screen. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then we do an investigation. He comes carrying it out. I'm like, what else?
So I have a question for you, Mike. What was it about me and my work and team that stood out to you? Was it, the artistic way I do things? Was it a scientific way? I mean, what was it?
So, you reached out to us and we started looking into your stuff. And I really, I've got a chance to spend time with some National Geographic and Discovery Channel film folks and photographers. I just spent 2 weeks ago with Seth Breedlove and his crew from Small Town. Taking the scientific and taking the artistic that you guys have and really using the equipment that's readily available on the market to prove a scientific thing. Like I said, guys on my team, I've got a field biologist, I've got an entomologist, I've got surgeons, one of the first laser officers in the country to work for Disney, who also is an energy healer and works with crystals, and his dad was one of the original guys that designed lasers. I mean, the folks I deal with, my background in the criminal justice field. So I'm very interested in the scientific aspects. How do you disprove? I got pulled into the paranormal aspect through the cryptid world, through Bigfooting and working with the Squatch Detective, and I wouldn't say disproving everything, but taking a look at the technology, looking at video, looking at audio, and say, okay, how are things needed? How do we bring things together? Shannon, I do need a chemist. I don't have one on there.
So you're jumping down a rabbit hole methodically.
Yeah. And then I got pulled in to do a paranormal investigation with the guys, Brian and Mike there from the Demon Files, the Flannel Brothers there, Mike Dolan's and
Brian McCulley.
And,
I got to Brian.
and watching that, and then going on an investigation, finding hair, and then bringing it back to a buddy of mine, who's a scientist, and said, okay, hey, sample this out. Well, then we get in the car and we start driving around to do Bigfoot stuff. And he starts going, well, you know, I had this paranormal experience when I was in the military, and then I had this. So then we start looking at the equipment that he has in the car scientifically.
Mhm.
So looking at what you guys are using, which is off the shelf stuff that anybody can get, makes sense to me. I can say, okay, you're using a Sony or you using a Nikon camera. Well, I can grab my Nikon camera and I can go try that same thing. I haven't spent $1,000 on an SLS or something like that I can't understand currently. Now, we've used them with other folks on investigations, with Kristie on the ground saying, hey, I can feel this, and the SLS is picking up something around her, and have a thermal camera on top of that going, okay, so I've got thermals, I've got this, I've got a human being, and we got multiple thermals with multiple night visions. We can sense that stuff's going on. And you guys taking that stuff is very important. Your artistic eye on how you're putting your films together, it's really.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of the science, the real sci-fi stuff, because what I've dealt with in the past, like I said, the Church of Satan guys, I've seen a couple of serial killers and what they've done to people. You know, it's like, I want to go away from that stuff, but. We go into houses. I like looking at architecture. And if somebody has an eye to pick up that architecture, that's something that really brings me in. So, like I said, Seaman, you guys got an ROV. I use an underwater robot for work. I've seen some funky things on that. So to use that technology, it's above and beyond than sitting there with a REM pod in the middle of a room going, how's it work?
Yeah.
You know, or the 2 flashlights. Well, how do you...
That's
and we've used the flashlights just recently in an old tin shop, an underground museum.
Yeah,
I can feel something going back and forth behind me. Knowing everybody's sitting down in the room and watching those lights. Okay, so how do I take that? Well, it's the documentation. And if somebody's going to scientifically document it, put it there, go back and say, okay, where are we going? I use quite a few things. Like I said, the infrasound. I've had this discussion. We had it with Tim Shaw a couple of weeks ago. When somebody's doing an EVP or they're doing a light session or something like that, I've got different meters for infrasound, and we can notice a jump in that 0 to 20 range that's going on there. What's that decimal meter showing you? So it's all stuff just document. We can't prove it yet, but it's data that we can use. So you guys collecting data, I find that is a very important thing, because eventually somebody's going to stumble on things. Like I said, I have friends that teach down at Monroe Institute, and they work on the remote viewing and the swoon bending. I still don't understand how they do it. But one of these days, we're going to figure out. And I had a background in martial arts, watching those guys shoot energy back and forth. I've watched energy healers where we put them on thermal cameras and biofield imagers, and you can see that energy transfer and go, I can't see it with my naked eye, but we can measure it with technology.
Some people can. Some people can see the auras.
some people can.
Yeah. I mean, you can train yourself to that. But to be able for the layman to say, okay, I got a thermal camera, I can see that heat transfer, and then get a biofield imager and see that energy transfer, and it's the same between a thermal imager and, it's interesting to see. You guys use grid pens. How many times we've seen something walk by a grid pen and go, I can't explain this. It's just documentation. So I mean, that's what really draws me to your team. Your thoughts and your thought process of scientific method. It's not every piece of wind that blows by is, it's a ghost, something touched me. My first experience with Kristie, I had a laser thermometer, and I couldn't figure out. I'm shooting windows. I've got my small Seek thermal that goes on my phone. I have my big ATN that I use for swatching, but I had the Seek in there, and I'm doing the contractor thing. Okay, there's the air conditioning unit. We're at Hinsdale House, and I'm like, windows, doors, vents. There's no cold air. Why is all this cold air here? I've been down in the basement. I've been upstairs.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling a draft? She's picking up on a family member, and I'm shooting thermal laser. I'm shooting thermal. I can't explain the cold. And she's like, oh, yeah, it's your grandfather. Starts to describe my grandfather. I've never met her before. So I'm like, somebody goes, "Hey, Mike, want a cigarette?" Yeah, I'm out the door. Not that I wanted a cigarette, but it was a good excuse to get out the door. So, but how
He's
do you
a big
explain
baby.
that kind of thing? We've done EVPs where I've had you guys can hear me mumble here, and I ask, "Is it tranquil?" And I get it back.
Yeah.
Yes, and the following one is no, it's tranquil.
Yeah.
And you're like, put this aside and go back and listen to it because I'm not going to, And sure enough, it's like, okay, is your mind playing tricks on you when you're doing it? Or are you playing it 3 days later and you're like, or give it to somebody else? Hey, what's this say? And you're like, yeah, that's correcting your grammar. And you're like, okay, time to go.
That one, I was standing right next to him. Literally, we were around the fire and I was right next to him and there was nobody on the other side of him. And so it's those situations, some you can say, yes, it was just us, or it was more of a controlled environment. Others you can't. So that was pretty cool when that happened. It was funny, actually.
Or you chase his shadow finger down hallways and the hallways do 90-degree bends and you can still see it moving and you're like, there's the window. There's the light, there's the light, there's the window.
Right.
None of these hallways, none of the shadows would be in the right places to come down this hallway. And two of us both looking at each other going, and that kid was another filmmaker as well. And you look at each other going, no, I can't explain that one. You just chalk it up. Is that going to be replicated again? I was in another location where it had security lights. You see that big blob behind the house, and you bring your hands up and down. You try to replicate with flashlights. Can you get it? And watch somebody do a prayer and watch it fly into a window and go, okay, we're just going to document it and see if it happens again. And Teddy, if you're there, you can explain that place, know?
Well, even, with one of the last investigations we did, going back to something we were talking about earlier, with the free will versus the technology and the scientific, the science of all behind all this, with our last investigation, we'd been there before. We had K2 meters. We had some other stuff Mike brought, and they used it. At least at some point, some of the spirits, they would use the technology and the equipment to communicate, including the flashlights. And we usually use my mag light and Mike's mag light, and then just set it. And sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't. The second time we were there, these spirits chose only to work with the mag lights, and not even any mag light. It was my mag light that they used. They would not use anything else. So it's just very interesting to see how they pick and choose. And we communicated with the one, especially, it's a little boy around 6 years old. And he was so specific. When we spoke with him, I had brought like six different candies because, I don't have a sugar thing. I don't have an addiction to sugar or anything. But I had chocolate. I had Starburst. I had licorice. I had a whole bunch of stuff. But I also had like beef jerky. I had crackers with us. And we were able to narrow it down where he was too specific. We couldn't figure out why he didn't want chocolate, candy. Do you want a snack? Yes. Okay. Well, do you want this? I went through all this stuff a 6-year-old would want. He wanted the beef jerky. He was from a time where beef jerky was a treat. And it was just the coolest thing. So I'm going to be very curious to follow what you do and how you do it, and others, to back up what I'm able to, and others like me are able to pick up on our own to back up, because the why and the how, why are they willing to one day communicate with or use equipment that we have that's modern, and then one day they're not? Or we've had spirits come through in different locations too, and they openly say, I don't know how to use this, even though you say, here, just tap this, or here, just come around this, or it intimidates or scares them, so they don't want to use it, and you put out another method and it works.
Well, what we do is double-blind experiments, for one. If you watch season 6 on our YouTube channel, one of the ones you'd probably find really interesting is the Old Licking County Jail episode, where Jessica Bias, I get on a Skype call with her, and I just show her random pictures of the location and have her give me her impressions of them. And we document that as part of the film. And then then I tell her whether she is correct. Does her impressions line up with the history or the claims, or so on and so forth? And we actually, go and do the cross-checking with what she picks on versus what she doesn't. And what's interesting about the psychic phenomena is it's not 100% accurate, but you have to find a a success rate above what is statistically um, over chance, right? You know, like what is, you got to look for something that's higher than what you would get by just guessing. So the better you set up the double blind experiment, the more you put them in the dark, not telling them where you're going. Like my mother, for example, there's a film on my YouTube channel called At the Monroe House. And I didn't tell her where I was taking her. I didn't tell her where we were going. She knew nothing about the place. And she was able to pick up things. And we were able to prove that people can do what they claim they do. But the skeptics, they'll be like, oh, well, why don't you give me the lottery numbers? They don't understand how it works. They don't understand that. They don't understand that it's not a superpower. It's not 100% accurate. You can't tell. You don't have unlimited information up there. So there's channels. There's certain channels and rivers and, you know, pathways to lead to connections and identifying patterns, and some are able to pick up on this versus some are, you know, maybe they get it in dreams, maybe they see the future, maybe they feel people's emotions.
Don't work the same. Yep.
So that's what we do. We investigate each individual's stuff that they're going on and try to figure out how it works, how accurate it is, why isn't it accurate at this time, why is it accurate at that time. You know, we go through and log and methodically try to explain it and be open about it. We don't go in there saying, oh, I want to put this pressure on you for you to get it. And if you don't, that means you're not psychic. That's not how we do it. We go into it knowing that we're working with something that's not perfect, that's flawed, but there's something there to learn. There's something there with this phenomena. There's something to it, and we got to figure out what it is.
Right. I think I was talking a little more, though. My curiosity would be to figure out if there would be a way to figure out, without being told by spirit with technology, why they prefer one method over another. Like I said,
an example of the method.
So we had, I forget where it was. It might have been the Statler when I was doing one of those tours. One of the energies that came in didn't like one of the pieces of the equipment, whether it was the 360, whether it was one they had to touch or be around. They didn't like it. They were intimidated by it. They didn't like the lights and the noise. But when we put, I don't know if it was a K2 or if it was a flashlight, something simpler, they were okay and they started communicating with it. And I was able to validate that we were still dealing with the same energy or spirit. They just didn't prefer. So I would love to know how scientifically we could gauge what I know in that way, what they're saying, if it's possible. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'll be honest with you. And there will be no scientific community that will ever accept flashlight ITC ever.
Sure.
There will be no scientific community that would accept anything from a REM pod or a K2 meter or anything like that. Okay. So if you want to find ways to validate why they choose other methods or not, you have to play by their rules and play their game. And their rules in their game is the scientific method and using calibrated equipment and equipment that is not susceptible to false positives and in a controlled environment. So as long as you play by those rules, then you can start getting the answers that you seek.
So it'll never happen. So it'll never happen. I don't disagree with you, but in my experience, I don't think that's ever possible then, because we can never totally control an environment because we can't control.
Do you know what they told the Wright brothers?
What they tell the Wright brothers?
Couldn't fly.
They told them they couldn't fly.
I
want you to really think about it, Kristie. I want you do not put those type of limitations on man. Okay, that's a mistake.
No, that's not a negative. I'm not being negative about it. I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, you said you don't think it would be proven. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think it's possible to be proven, at least because I went really far. I know that it's almost impossible because I'm already saying that spirit's talking to me and giving me the answer. I want to know if we'd be able to pick up on, without me there, or validating me giving that answer. Does that make sense? Being able to pick up on
recorders, I believe, are doing it.
Well, yeah, but that's the same as using me.
Well, no, it's a recorder doesn't have a consciousness. It doesn't view reality through a subjective lens like your senses does.
You're correct. But what I'm saying is that's still not a controlled thing, and there can be glitches, and you can pick up something. It's not controlled enough. That's my point, though. Like I'm
Yeah.
actually agreeing with you and saying there's no. I
That's
would
why
love
you
to
gotta
see how
control
far
it.
we can go with this. Do you know what I mean? And to see.
Yeah,
And
just
this is up and
control,
beyond my
just
pay grade.
control
I don't
the
know what's
environment.
out there. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Put the recorder in a controlled environment. Like, well, field research is hardly ever controlled in a lab. But what
Right.
you do in field research, like if you want to understand like the behavior of lions in South Africa, you're not going to be able, you're going to have some things that you're going to need to know about in order to know that, okay, this is a reason that we can't control it, but we know to cross check it with that. So control also has a lot to do with knowing what can impact your field of study. So if the more you know about those things, the better you are to rule them out when you get data to cross check with it. And that's what a lot of field research is in the paranormal. And that's what we're not doing properly. And that's what we constantly as Interface Death try to do. We try to learn how to do field research the way like National Geographic does, or, field researcher does, all those people, they have all this pool of experience from all these years. They figured out so much. What are they doing that we're not doing? So we try to do those things.
Justin, do you hit a location multiple times to try to replicate, and do you use redundancy systems? So are you using duplicates of the same recorder or the same camera to try to duplicate, like a double blind kind of thing when you're there? So are you using 2 Zoom microphones to turn around and see if you're picking up the same sound? Are you using 2 of the same camera systems? Or,
Yes.
That's why she's busting my chops about the monitor, because I bought that so I can put my thermal cams and my night visions together and record the same area. Are you picking up those same items? I guess is that something your team does on the scientific end?
Yes, like the voice phenomena recorder we use identical microphones next to each other. Okay, does something come across one and not the other? So if it does, that's an anomaly. We have to mark it as an anomaly. If it sounds like speech, then we can perceive it as speech, but it doesn't mean that it's speech from someone like us, for example. Right. So there's limitations to what you can do to infer or deduce. You can say, oh, that should not happen, or that's definitely unexplained. But there's limitations to these parameters and experiments that you set up to actually know if there's someone speaking to you beyond the gray that's a disincarnate being. That's the point, I think, Kristie, is like, how are we ever going to prove that? So we're far from that. And I do agree with her that we are far from that. But I don't want people to like just drop their tools and head on home and eat dinner.
No, that's not what I meant at all. No. I would love to see how science could try someday to prove or to back up what I'm saying instead of vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Communication with spirit and need.
Neurotransmitters
But that's what I mean. That's what I meant when I said it's above my pay grade.
Artificial intelligence might be a way I would look at in the future.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence might be a way to simulate how you do things, but with a machine, with a tool that we could be more objective about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's what I meant when I said going deeper on that deeper level, how that communication works, to understand what they're saying to me, even though I know what they're saying to me. Can you, I don't know. I'm struggling. I know it has to do a lot with like,
human perception is what you're talking about.
What's the institute, Mike? Brian Daly.
Monroe.
Thank you. Monroe. They do a lot on that level. Neurologically, correct? Am I correct?
Yeah.
He is the one that does it. Okay. Make sure I'm not promoting.
They hook people up to EEGs and do experiments with it.
Right.
Yeah, put you in a full copper room and see if you can, remote view. And they're the whole guys that were tied in with that, the men and talk to goats and the third eye spies. And that whole group of guys and girls. And they do some really interesting.
Well, I'm glad people are out there doing it.
Biofield imaging and stuff. So yeah, if you've ever seen, there's something if you're looking for a piece of equipment, and we got to get Brian on here one of these days to explain it. But
Yeah.
it shows energy, and they've taken it like it's a biofield imagery. You ever seen one?
Yes, I have. I'm trying to think if it's the same thing that you're talking about.
It reads the body's aura, reads energy.
Right, but
And
it's light. You're talking about light energy, correct?
yeah, it's kind of like a light energy thing. It's interesting. They've got pictures like an old farmhouse where you could like see where the lamps were, and they picked up, lots of other interesting things like people
Where the
standing
lamps
behind
were?
where the lamps were. Yeah, somewhere I've got the picture somewhere.
Yeah.
So
It's really
they've used
That would be
got
something I would really
spirit
pick
going.
apart.
Oh, I've been trying for a while. They've got spirits going through things at Gettysburg, and yeah, it's an
There's
interesting.
some paracons that claim that they can do aura photography, and a lot of that's bogus.
Yeah,
I've
this
seen
is like the Krillian photography that was done. The energy stuff.
I think that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
There's a certain type of optics that allows you to see magnetic fields and other types of energy like that as an image.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Say it again.
I'll send it to you later.
Because I have taken a look at that. I would love to
Yeah.
get my hands on that type of optics.
Yeah, look at
I
that.
have done a few psychic fairs where there was a couple for a while in Buffalo that was going to the fairs as a vendor, and they were taking pictures of people's auras and giving it to them. I don't know if it's quite the same. I'm sure Brian's stuff is much more technical and much more advanced and probably works differently.
Yeah.
But I've seen what you're talking about too, because those pictures are just that's crazy.
Well, yeah, you're taking like regular cameras, or maybe you're modifying them. You don't want to take cameras around me because I know how they work intimately. Okay.
Right.
So, a lot of people are playing on the ignorance, and even their own ignorance. Maybe they believe wholeheartedly that it's imaging what they believe it's imaging. When it's not. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's
just
a lot
sent
of
you
that
a thing
out
in
there
the private.
field,
Sweet.
So haunting here at the haunting at the Hillview Manor, because I definitely, like you said, I really like your artistic eye, so I'd like to share this with the audience, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So this time I think I actually have the sound on.
All right, you get a cookie.
All right.
My name's Justin. I'm sure if there's anybody here, you met us a little while ago when we were up here for a tour. I'm all by myself. My friends are downstairs. Did I just hear you? It sounds like I'm completely surrounded.
Justin's up there by himself. Up on the second floor. Mm-hmm. He's sitting outside of room 202. He told me to give him 10 minutes to see what he got.
So Hillview, room 202. Isn't that little boy that's supposed to have been up there? Is that what that is?
There's different people have different experiences. When I was on the tour, first time there, we were out in the hallway outside of 202. He hadn't even taken us into that room or said anything. And I got led in there not knowing what room it was, and I saw children playing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's strange. Why am I seeing children playing? And then I started to pick up on a woman who was very disturbed. She had a lot of, mental schizophrenia or whatever. And then I started picking up on a lot of other traumatic things that happened to a lot of females in there. And that place is very interesting because the psychokinetics in some places like poor farms, hospitals, asylums, it will start to like do like a feedback loop thing to where it all starts to link together like some kind of crazy psychic caterpillar thing. And when I see it, it's just like it's all exponentially adding the energy in. And it was like I saw a woman being raped like really bad.
Ooh.
And then I seen this entity like trying to jump women and do all of these type of weird. I just it offered all that information to me right then, and I was like, what is this? Like I've never experienced that before.
Right.
So how do you verify that scientifically?
You don't. I didn't verify that scientifically. There was things that the tour guy said that I was correct on that you just have to take my word for it that I know about what had happened. But there's nothing scientific about the way that, someone will pick up something when they're there. Now, I wasn't like going there expecting it. I wasn't setting up a double spline experiment to see if, so there was no science about that.
Okay.
So I just the reason, and I don't know why this particular one stands out to me over all of the other episodes or that room for that matter, but I do remember when I watched the episode, that room and that moment stuck out to me. So I was just looking up to make sure I didn't say something incorrectly. So Destination Fear taped one of their episodes there. Were you there before or after? Because what you're describing, it was after. So I believe it was Tanner who went up there and had a violent experience and got very sick and threw up. Yeah. So what you're saying now, it makes perfect sense to me with the reaction he had with the energy you picked up on as well.
Yeah, I definitely got rushed. Josh Bender got rushed twice. We got rushed near the same time up there. And it was very much like the time I was explaining where I got rushed in that home I grew up in. It's like you feel like everything's there. The whole feeling of someone rushing you is there, but there's no one there.
Right.
It's so bizarre. And you react to it like unconsciously, like a reflex reaction. Mm-hmm. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I've been there a couple times.
You get pushed the first time and you don't understand what just happened, So I got to give thumbs up to your drone guy. He's really got some nice angles there. So
Josh.
Yeah.
Like he is definitely honing his craft. He knows he's got an eye for lines and angles. We have production meetings. We try to talk about what we want, but you never really know. We don't scout these locations like normal filmmakers with budgets would do. We only got the scout locations for the Haunted Hartford City one. But for this one, we just go there. We kind of Google Earth it beforehand, try to talk about what we want to do. And then he finds opportunities as he's there to get extra stuff if he has time.
Wow. That's really, he does a nice job. That's hard. It's not easy to do,
No.
And to have an eye for it and be creative enough and that's like a gift,
What's, I guess, where's your next adventure? And
it's going to be Ohio State Reformatory in August.
Okay.
We were going to go to Gettysburg for the bash, but it just got canceled today.
Mm-hmm. We saw that. Yeah. 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 That was as we're reacting. So yeah, so that was on our list as well to be there. We're not real sure what's going on with that yet.
Yeah, we usually
so,
go, we set up a vendor, we stay, we go a day early, we go,
mhm.
take photography, go around, do the whole Gettysburg experience. Sometimes we try to investigate spots, but it's kind of hard because Sachs Bridge is like a one stop for everybody. That's the only public place that anybody can go to. So, the places that charge, or even to go to the Lookout House where Pam and Steve have, is kind of off limits during that time. So Battlefield's off limits because some idiot ruined it for everybody there years ago. Yeah.
That's a shame.
So for our audience, what would you suggest how to get started? Either in the paranormal field, what would be your jump into things? Your jump.
I would try to find. There's so much resource of information and people out there, so many ideas. I would just try to find a mentor that fits what you want. Now, what you want may change the course of you pursuing the paranormal research you're going through. So you might start off one way and end up another, and it may evolve and change. But you want to try to find someone to put you under their wing and take you in and teach you things and how to do this, like shows like this, for example.
I have to go. I have a family emergency. I'm so sorry. Justin, I apologize. Everybody, I apologize. I just got a phone call. I have to go. I will be in touch later.
Okay. And that's what I would suggest, but there's a lot of people out there. There's classes on how to do, field research. There's a lot of useful information out there that doesn't have the whole, paranormal word associated to it. Just learn how to be a good investigator, learn how the mind works, learn how your equipment works, go through all the necessary and reputable resources to learn all that information. That's what I preach all the time, Mike. If you don't know how it works, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Sorry, it kind of threw me off there a bit. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, I hope everything's okay with that.
Yeah. She had like the follow-up questions here at the end. So what's your favorite piece of equipment? What's your favorite camera to get out there and film with? You guys do a lot of dark work and
Well, we use our budget allows us to use the Panasonic Lumix G85s.
Okay.
They're mirrorless micro four third 4K cameras. The reason we use those is they look great. They're very small, light. You can still get Cine lenses for it and do stuff that replicates what you would see in bigger budget films, but on a smaller budget. We do everything in 4K for our video production, so that's what works for us. We use the Sony AX lines for our night vision applications, like the AX53 and 100. We use modded cameras. We just recently got the Zoom Q2 in 4Ks and modded those. We took the IR filters out of those, so it's more sensitive to infrared light. And we use other various cameras from Zoom. We use Zoom Q8s with modifications, infrared and full spectrum, what they call full spectrum modifications, which actually isn't full spectrum, but it's just an extended from regular light into the infrared spectrum. But yeah, I want to have to say that the Lumix G85 is a good camera if you want to get into filmmaking and do 4K. And on a budget anywhere from $1,000 on up to $2,500, you can go with the AX100, AX53, or up to the AX700, or even higher. I mean, I can start listing off cameras, but yeah, those are what we can afford, and I think those are the best with the budget that we have.
Do you get it? I know you guys are helping, you're filming, but the evidence that you collect on those cameras, what's the best evidence you've collected?
I can't think of anything super good that we've got visually. Usually it's all debunkable, and it's usually stuff that a lot of ghost shows, sensationalize and use, as like, illuminated airborne particles and lens flares, reflections. I like the Ghost Hunters show. I can't stand the new season when they use the FLIR cameras and they look at windows and say they see things through windows with the FLIR. I want to just take it away from them because you can't see through glass with the.
We were at a jail in Washington County like 3 days after I got my Sikh, and we're walking through and we're doing cells, and I'm like, okay, it's a jail. I'm not worried about this, blah, blah, blah. And I turn and I scan to the back of the cell, and I'm like, oh my God, there's something in here. I'm like, there shouldn't be anything in here. So somebody had cleaned out the office space and put one of the mirrors in the back. We're just, and I'm like, okay, yeah. So it's that first, okay. So yeah, now I tell people all the time, make sure you know what's behind you, and yeah, you can't shoot through glass at all. Supposedly you can shoot through some thin plastics, but I have yet to see that happen for thermals. But haven't tried it yet. There's some
thin plastics. I would say no. Anything solid, it doesn't work like regular light. Your thermal imaging cameras read surface temperatures. Like that's why firefighters use them, because you can see through smoke.
Well, yeah, I use them for search and rescue. So I understand, but I'm like, I don't know how they're doing it. I haven't tried it. I have to talk to a couple of guys from.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, but I would be skeptical about the plastic.
Yeah, so would I. So mostly audio. Anything with the lasers at all?
I want to say no. We haven't got anything good with the lasers. Most of all of it is voice phenomena or audio anomalies. There's a lot of readings on meters and sensors that we get that we can't explain. That is very. That's probably the most predominant stuff that we get. That the stuff. I mean, you can't know what's all out there. You try to. Are we under a fault line? Is there geomagnetics around that we should know about? Is the sun shooting off a bunch of radiation that will trip our meters? Like, we try to keep tabs and all that, but you just can't 100%. No. So a lot of the anomalies on that type of stuff isn't like hardcore, unexplained stuff. But the voice phenomena is the one thing that we have recorded that definitely is something that should not be there. And there's no explanation at all for it. Especially disembodied voice phenomena, like a clear, coherent voice coming out of thin air, recorded on all the stuff that you got rolling, and there's nobody there saying it. It's just crazy how that happens.
Are you getting it on multiple devices or one device?
Yeah, the disembodied acoustic voices that we get, you record on everything that's in the vicinity. The EVPs only show up on one. And it seems like it's a manipulation of the device itself, either the microphone or something else. You can test whether it's an imprint on the flash memory, or if you're using the cassette, the analog stuff. There's some other mechanics that would allow for things to happen there versus the digital recorders. But EVPs are much more rare than disembodied actual acoustic manifestations, in my experience, anyway.
And what's the coolest one you've gotten?
The coolest EVP?
Disembodied voice.
Disembodied voice. The coolest disembodied voice. Well, the coolest disembodied thing that I got was at the Monroe house. My mom was walking through, doing her walkthrough like we were talking about. And she goes up to the stairwell and she says this entity that's haunting the location is not wanting her to go up there. It's barring her from going up there. I'm like, well, push on. So she pushes on. She gets to the bottom stairs. She starts to walk up. She gets up a few, and then she stops, turn around. She's like, oh my God, he's lobbing severed heads down the stairwell. Do you hear that? I'm like, no, I don't. And I'm, this is just one of many moments. I think my mom's just lost it. Right. At least I hope so. So she's like, well, maybe you heard it you'll hear it on the playback. So a week later, she comes over and she's listening to the review with me. We get to that point, and I swear to God, Mike, it sounds like someone has dropped ripe tomatoes down that stair, and it hits every freaking step like she said it does, and there's no explanation for it. And that just breaks my brain, like, and just getting, like, asking a question, like at the Madison Seminary, we ask a question about something that is allegedly hidden behind a wall there, and you get what sounds like a female saying yes to you right there in front of you, but there's no one there to say it. And I'm like, how is that possible? You wonder how it's possible, but that's what we're trying to figure out.
Do you live listen?
Yes, all the time. If there's, you'll see our videos. I always got these on because I'm live listening, because if something comes across, you want to know when it comes across. Plus the video production we do, you have to live listen. So, if there's something wrong with your audio equipment, you have to troubleshoot immediately.
Right.
Because you won't have audio. So yeah, there's multiple reasons why we do that.
Awesome. Well, we're coming to the end here. I really appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, it was cool to
folks,
get to know you guys.
I put your links, and I'm going to poke them back there again. That's the Battlefield Imager one here. They're up above in the comments there to get to Justin's website. Yep, it's right there. See if it'll pop it up here. It's back up here. So interfacedeath.net, and their videos are the team's bios there. Contact information for Justin is on there. Let me put it up there a little bit longer here. For those folks that are getting on, it was also posted in all the chats. So it's on the YouTube, it's on all our Facebook pages. We do appreciate it. Maybe one of these days we can get together at one of these conventions. We can sit and talk. Like I said, we were supposed to be in Gettysburg as well. I don't know how that's going to play with everything, especially because our governor keeps changing all the COVID requirements where we can go. So
I can't wait till it's over.
It's been an interesting couple of months. So again, thank you so much. We do appreciate you joining us. And thank you. Anything else you would like to add? So
I mean, if you want to support my work, if you want to see what we do, the Haunted Hartford City, we don't try to do many commercial films. All of our stuff is free to watch on YouTube, and we try to get stuff from Patreon from our followers. So if you like what you see on YouTube, you can go check out our Patreon. If you want to see our commercial film, you can go to interfacedeath.net. Go to just the homepage will direct you to how to get it all on Blu-ray, digital download, or rent. And I tell you what, everybody that's seen it said it's what was worth purchasing, either for rent or the Blu-ray. And it's the very best we can offer as far as cinematography and documentation of paranormal investigations in an entire town. So please check it out. I would appreciate it.
Yeah. And when you have another thing comes up, let us know, and we'll put it on our group page for our group members to pay attention. So
thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, and have a wonderful evening. So
thank you,
Justin.
All
right.
Thank you.
Bye. So, folks, fortunately, Kristie had to leave us a little early tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Please check out our next show. Will be a YouTube show. So all that those that haven't signed up or haven't subscribed, please subscribe over at our YouTube channel. Derek, thank you for putting that into the group there. He's got that up on here. Again, from here, where's my sage? Thank you for joining us, and please sample on. And where's our little fallout? And we'll see everybody next week on YouTube for a reading show.